2025.
Councilmember Ryan so moves.
Second the motion?
Motion and seconds made. Clerk, please take the roll.
Vice President Zarlingo.
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse.
Same.
Councilmember Ryan.
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely.
Yes.
Councilmember Tui.
Yes.
President Schwab.
Yes. Well, good evening, Mayor.
Good evening, President Schwab and Council. Last week I wasn't able to join us for our council meeting because I was traveling to DC. I participated in the Yale Mayor's Leadership Conference and CEO caucus, and was really a fast-paced event. It was hosted and paid for by Yale University, and so I was honored to be able to participate. And while I was out in DC, I got to meet with our delegation and the Department of Justice and some other key partners for the city and advocate on our behalf. So it was a really good week. I wanted to remind everybody that the State of the City is coming up. I hope everyone's able to RSVP and attend next week, Thursday, March 27th at 4 p.m. The event is hosted by the Everett Chamber, and there's tickets still available at everettchamber.org. You can also watch virtually if you can't attend at everettwa.gov/SOTC. Additionally, this year, we're adding a free State of the City Community Edition on Monday, March 31st at the Everett Station at 6 p.m. At the Community Edition, we will have a small community engagement fair where folks can learn more about ways to get involved with the city. And we're also asking people to please register for that event by visiting everettwa.gov/SOTC. March is Women's History Month, and I again wanted to just thank and appreciate and recognize all the women in leadership of this council, our city, departments, and hundreds of large and small businesses across our community. There's so many inspirational women, so I just want to thank you all for your leadership and everything you do for our community. March is also National Social Worker Month, and we're proud to recognize the incredible work of our CARE Community Alternative Response in Everett. I'm so thankful for this group of professionals for their dedication to helping community members overcome challenges, addiction, and homelessness, and so much more. They help connect them to essential services, and really just want to thank Kelly Rourke, Ashley Dyer, and the full team for caring for those in most need in our community. And finally, I'd like to ask Councilmember Tui to present our proclamation on Youth Art Month. I believe there are some guests you'd like to welcome to the council, so.
Yeah, I'd like to welcome Andrea Aguilar up to the podium there. She teaches at Jefferson Elementary School, and she also is a strong member of the Shack Art Center's Education Committee. So thank you for being here. And so I would like to read the proclamation. Whereas Youth Art Month is an annual celebration established in 1961 that recognizes the value of visual art education in a student's overall success and encourages support for quality art programs in our schools. And experience in the visual arts cultivates valuable skills such as imagination, creative expression, effective collaboration, innovation, resourcefulness, and adaptability that are not the focus of other subjects in the K-12 curriculum. And visual art education develops students' creative potential and improves problem-solving and critical thinking skills by reinforcing and bringing to life what students learn in other subjects. And the 2024-2025 theme for Youth Art Month is Healing Through Color. And in support of Youth Art Month, each state coordinates a contest in which students design a flag based on the annual theme. The winning designs are made into flags which are displayed and recognized at the National Art Education Association Convention. And Youth Art Month aims to increase community understanding and interest in art and visual art education through the involvement in art exhibits, workshops, and other creative ventures. And multiple national leaders have acknowledged the necessity of including visual art experiences in all students' education. And I commend all those who advocate for youth art and educators throughout our state and encourage people to support visual art programs in our schools. Now, therefore, I, Judy Tui, Everett City Council member, together with Mayor Cassie Franklin, do hereby proclaim March 2025 as Youth Art Month and commend its observance to all citizens. Thank you. And thank you, Andrea, for being here. Thank you.
Thanks again. I just wanted to thank you for recognizing how important visual arts are for our students and kids in this community. Everett has a really strong arts community. You can see it everywhere around the city. And Everett Public Schools has recently adopted new art curriculum from pre-K all the way through post-secondary education. And so this is really great. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I have no further comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, so on to public comments. Public comment, which includes written comments, acknowledgement. Under our rules, written comments shall be considered in the same manner as oral comments. The person submitting comments must provide their name and city of residence. Written comments require this to be made part of the official council record. Good evening, Angie. Do we have any written comments or anyone signed up to speak?
Good evening, President Schwab. We have no written comments, but we have one individual in chambers. So if Timothy would like to come to the podium for public comment. Timothy? Yeah.
Thank you.
Please state your full name and city of residence, and you have 3 minutes to speak.
Good evening, council members and mayor. My name is Timothy Chipman. I live in Everett here in the Port Gardner area. Thank you for the opportunity tonight to speak. My name is Tim, and I'm I'm here. I'm a resident of North Star Apartments, located right next to Andy's place. It's a property I know has been in the text of many meetings. I've watched as a neighborhood of totally unsuspecting homeowners have been put through everything from being burgled to having death delivered to their front doors in the guise of fentanyl, and the irresponsible acts of Compass Health. When renting a home, shouldn't we as citizens of this great state and municipality have the right to feel safe? I was placed as a habitually homeless person at Andy's place, one of the first residents there. There are 14 properties that I am aware of, soon to be 15. And I am sure that the 15th on Broadway will be run in the same manner as the other 14 have been in the past. The lack of organization, no mental health facilities, and no facilitators. And at most places, no real security. But now to my problem. As I said, I live next door to Andy's place at North Star, directly behind the new Compass building being built. I am literally 30 feet from the main construction entrance, my balcony. I also have 8 portable toilets 35 feet from my balcony. There are no clear days, only green cloudy ones. There is no opening of my windows, no balcony to use, only the sounds of vehicles with the backup beepers, portable toilet smell, and the 10-hour-a-day noise levels that keep me from having some type of peace in my life. Quiet? What's that? Can you imagine how many times a day I hear a portable toilet door slam? The dirt accumulated in my home needs to be swept 3 times a day. I have COPD and my lungs show their appreciation by coughing now more than ever. My behavioral health has been compromised with the construction site that is approximately, like I said, 30 feet from my windows and balcony. At one time, I was a happy and productive member of society. Now I'm filled with anger and disappointment at a system that will allow noise code violations, not to mention health codes, with those portable toilets outside my window. I will end with this. A lot of folks like myself are in fear of coming and talking about this because of retribution or fear of losing something we're all grateful for, our homes. Therefore, I ask humbly anyone, council members, please look into this. I have video and audio if needed. Thank you all again.
Thank you. And that's all we have for public comment.
Okay, thank you. So moving on to council comments. We'll start with Councilmember Zarlingo.
Thank you. Just a couple of quick things. Attended earlier this week, the Snohomish County Law and Justice Council meetings representing Everett there. And this is an advisory committee to the Snohomish County Council on Law and the Justice System. Includes a wide variety of partners, prosecutors, public defenders, judges, court officials, people in the juvenile justice system, and also importantly, community members and elected officials. This group has been kind of nearly dormant for a while, but revving back up and getting more functional. We now have the bylaws that we need and are working to recharge our public involvement in this. So I'll have more to say that in the future as more happens and more things to report. And then also attended the Puget Sound Regional Council's Transportation Policy Board. If you're not familiar, the Puget Sound Regional Council is a regional body that coordinates the efforts of the four fast-growing Puget Sound counties in the Puget Sound region: Snohomish County, King County, Pierce County, and Kitsap County. And they're doing things like certifying the comprehensive plans, what they'll be doing for us a little bit later on this year: Bellevue, Bothell, Burien, Port Orchard, and so on. And then they're also working on a regional safety action plan, something that's especially critical here in Everett, given some of our difficulties with traffic safety, and then also an update to the regional transportation plan. This is all really part of the Growth Management Act that was put into place 30-some years or so ago. And again, more specifics to report on that later, but that's all for now.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Fosse.
No comments or questions tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Ryan.
Great, thank you. Good evening. Timothy, I'd be happy to reach out to Compass to see if there's a way to move those toilets. I think that sounds not pleasant to be next to, so I'd be happy to reach out and look into it. Thank you for bringing it forward. On Monday, I attended the Lowell Neighborhood Association meeting, and thank you to Alice Ann for the wonderful presentation from our planning department on the comp plan. The group had a really good discussion. The main focus was on that stretch there on Second Avenue and the businesses that are there, and ways that the comp plan can help support small business development. And neighbors really shared just how much they cherish that stretch of just small businesses in their neighborhood that they can walk to and enjoy. And I had shared that I'd be happy to reach out to share more about the neighbors' interest in having the grocery that had been there to come back, and see if there's any resources to get that building back up and running. So happy to follow up on that. And they also share that starting in April, the Riverfront Development will be having food trucks on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 4:30 to 7:30. I think in perpetuity. And I just wanted to share too that this Sunday is another Get Ready Market from the Everett Farmers Market, and I hope to see you there. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Vogely.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. I am uncertain of the specific compatible uses and where certain items, such as toilets, are supposed to be placed, but I'm sure there's code, and so I'm sure staff knows about it. Thank you, Councilmember Ryan, for offering to look into it. Also, I want to remind you, and then if staff can get back to you also about just the cleanup, because I heard you also say that there's 3 times a day of sweeping, and that's not good for your lungs. And then that reminds me that I don't know how to put it because I didn't write it down beforehand. I was pulling into our parking lot one evening around 7:30 just recently, next to our new restrooms, and there were 2 gentlemen, each utilizing a different part of the parking lot to urinate. And they were housed and they were drunk and they had their own cars. And I imagine that there was probably a restaurant that they could have utilized the toilet. And I told them that we indeed had toilets right there, and I pointed to them, and they laughed and did not know. So I'm wondering if we might put restroom along the back of the public toilet, so that. I also gave them a hard time about giving homeless people a hard time because, you know, they don't actually have toilets to use, and these people could have. So that's just an ugly story that I wanted to tell tonight. That is all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Tui.
I don't have any comments tonight. Thank you.
Okay, and for my comments, just wanted to remind council that we recessed our budget committee meeting, and then after this council meeting, we'll convene on that. And then also I would ask admin during your report, if you could make a quick comment on consent item 5 and what that change is, if you can, if you're available. And then also in our comp plan presentation today, just to give you a heads up, I'm proposing 4 amendments after talking with constituents and developers. There's an opportunity to encourage some more housing in a few of the lots, a very small portion. And then in a portion of Mukilteo Boulevard, it was a significant input to make a change there. So in the end, I'm proposing actually some upscaling versus down to balance out. So those will be coming. So thank you very much. Administrative report.
I don't have anything specific. I'll have a comment on your action item to help explain a change in that, if that's necessary. I think hold until that time. I didn't get your question in advance on item 5, but I can share that that is a contract amendment with Vera, who provides medical services to city employees and eligible dependents, and also retirees who are now, and spouses that are also eligible to access the clinic. Vera has grown some of their other partnerships outside just the city of Everett. And so we renegotiated the contract just to make sure that it works for all parties, and it reduces city expenditure by about $600,000 a year. That was something we knew about as the budget was being developed. And so it's incorporated into the 2025 budget. And this amendment to the agreement makes that official. So.
Good. Thank you very much. How about our city attorney, David Hall?
I don't have a report or any comments. We are requesting a 10-minute executive session pursuant to RCW 4230 110(1)(I) to discuss a legal matter with no council action to follow.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, moving on to our consent items. We have 6. Do I hear a motion?
So move the motion.
Seconded.
Okay, motion's been made to approve consent items 1 through 6. Clerk, please take the roll.
Vice President Zarlingo.
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse.
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan.
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely. Sorry. Yes. Councilmember Tui.
Yes.
President Schwab.
Yes. Okay, moving on to proposed action items. We have item 7's been read into the record. Are there any questions about item 7? The final reading will be March 26th. Okay, moving on to proposed action item number 8, Council Bill 2503-20. First reading, adopt an ordinance closing a special improvement project entitled Sewer O Utility Upgrades Phase 2. Third and final reading, April 2nd, 2025. Are there any questions on item number 8? Okay, moving on to item number 9, Council Bill 2503-21, first reading, adopt an ordinance creating a special improvement project entitled Everett Point Industrial Center, Epic Green Bridge. Third and final reading, 4/2/25. Do we have any questions about or comments on Councilmember Zarlingo?
Well, just a quick comment, because I don't want other people to share my confusion. This is, it says to accumulate all costs for the improvement. This is costs for the design. Sadly, the actual improvement, the bridge construction is going to be a whole lot more than this and will come in the future. And then lastly, if you want to know where this is, if you're out driving around on Everett Avenue, just keep driving on Everett Avenue. And when it kinks and turns left and is about to go over an embankment, that's where the bridge will be.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, on to our action items. Item number 10, Council Bill 2502-17, third and final reading, adopt an ordinance providing for the issuance, sale, and delivery of one or more series of limited tax general obligation bonds in the aggregate principal amount not to exceed 28 million. I have a motion.
So moved.
Second the motion.
Okay, motion second's been made. Are there any questions? Okay, seeing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Vice President Zarlingo.
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse.
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan.
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely.
Yes.
Councilmember Tui.
Yes.
President Schwab.
Yes. Okay, moving on to item number 11, Council Bill 2502-18, third and final reading, adopt an ordinance providing for the issuance of one or more series of water and sewer revenue bonds in the aggregate principal amount not to exceed 181 million. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay, any questions, comments? Okay, clerk, please take the roll.
Vice President Zarlingo.
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse.
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan.
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely.
Yes.
Councilmember Tui.
Yes.
President Schwab.
Yes. Okay, moving on to resolution, item number 12, adopt a resolution declaring intent to issue general indebtedness to be repaid with certain sales and the use taxes that the city receives under the local infrastructure financing tool program pursuant to chapter 39.102 RCW. Do I hear a motion?
Councilmember Ryan, so moves.
Second the motion.
Motion and second's been made. Do we have any questions? Councilmember Ryan?
Thanks. Just a comment and a gentle reminder that this isn't a new tax that we're implementing on residents. It's a existing tax that would be diverted to the state, but instead it's coming to the city to help pay for this. So just wanted to put a little exclamation point on that. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification. Appreciate that. All right, any other comments, questions? All right, clerk, please take the roll.
Vice President Zarlingo.
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse.
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan.
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely.
Yes.
Councilmember Tui.
Yes.
President Schwab.
Yes. Okay, we have item number 13. It's an updated version award the 2025 Champlain Below Down Timber Salvage Sale. If you remember in the agenda, we had the notice out, but then the sale went out right away. To the highest responsible bidder, Cherry Valley Logging Company, in the amount of $1,323,650, and authorize the mayor to sign the timber sale contract. I have a motion.
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay, administrative, Jennifer, would you like to make a comment on this?
No, if there's no questions, that's the bid opening was yesterday. So, and we appreciate the speedy move. It helps get the timber on its way to future uses, I guess. Yeah.
So we put it on the agenda just so we know it coming and that we knew there would be a last minute bid, right? Okay. All right, no question, more comments. Clerk, please take the roll.
Vice President Zarlingo.
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse.
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan.
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely.
Yes.
Councilmember Tui.
Yes.
President Schwab.
Yes. Okay, moving on to our briefing, our briefings. First up is our comp plan.
Good evening, Council President Schwab, council members. I'm Yorick Stevens Wajda, Planning Director. With me is Alisanne Wetzel, Long Range Planning Manager. We are here for a briefing and an opportunity to ask questions, get feedback, and make amendments to the early council draft package that was shared with the council about a month ago, right around Valentine's Day. I'll do a very quick recap of what is in that package. We've received some questions, some proposed amendments from council members. I'm happy to provide any information, kind of follow the lead of the council once I get through this this brief overview. The council early review package was shared again about a month ago. It included proposed goals, policies, and actions for 6 out of the 10 elements of the comprehensive plan. That is the most important and active portions of those elements, and those are 6 of the most important elements. So it's the kind of core of the comprehensive plan. Each one of those had been reviewed by the Planning Commission. Input had been incorporated into them and shared with you and the public for this 1-month review period. Here's the list of the elements that were in that. All of these documents are available on everettwa.gov/2044. Housing, urban form, design and development, transportation, climate change, parks, recreation, and open space. Since then, we've brought 4 of the remaining 5 through the Planning Commission. The last 2 of them, healthy communities and engagement, administration, and implementation, were last night. The last one remaining is the public facilities element, which we are working on. Development regulations included in the early package were 5 chapters in strike-through format, plus the zoning map, which is maybe the most important page of all of this for determining what can be built where in the future. The development regulations implement the goals and the policies of the comprehensive plan and were informed by the Planning Commission discussions and the public feedback, and now getting the opportunity for a first round of feedback from the council on these documents. This is a long list of the chapters that we expect to make some changes to as part of this periodic update, which includes both the comprehensive plan and the development regulations. I think most of the most important ones are in this early draft council package. Notably, Chapter 1908 are the neighborhood residential zone standards. This is the middle housing, implements the middle housing requirement from the state and is one of the most significant changes to our zoning and development regulatory framework here. The ones that are not bold, we have made a lot of progress and have drafts of many of them complete. Others are still in progress, and we're working to wrap those up in the next couple of weeks here. Again, all of these documents are available at everettwa.gov/2044 if you are following along at home. We've been conducting outreach over this last month and have visited, as we heard from Councilmember Ryan and others, we've visited a number of neighborhood associations, held a open house at the Weyerhaeuser Room and the Council of Neighborhoods. So we have been all about town, sharing the early draft council package and some of the high points of it, and then listening from residents of the neighborhoods, neighborhood leaders, and others who have attended. We've gotten some great feedback, had some great conversations, learned a lot, and been able to get people up to speed with what this update is all about. We have 2 more on the calendar, Delta tomorrow and then Pinehurst Beverly Park next week. There may be others, but those are the ones that I saw. And then after we go through any proposed amendments or any other questions and answers today, the next steps are publishing a complete draft comprehensive plan and development regulations. So besides those elements and development regulation chapters that needed to be completed, we also need to fill out the elements with the text and maps and tables that goes along with them. All of that we will plan to publish on March 27. I think that's the end of next week. Wish us luck over the next 10 days of wrapping that up. We will share that draft with the state of Washington and all the state agencies who have a 60-day review period that's required. We wanted to get that to the state to start that 60-day clock because we may not adopt before that 60-day clock is over. We may amend and make changes to it. So this does not restrict the council's ability to make changes big or small to the plan or the regulations after that. We will also transmit the package to the Puget Sound Regional Council. Councilmember Zarlingo mentioned the certification authority there, and they also review drafts before adoption to flag any potential issues. We will also have a draft environmental impact statement, which will discuss the potential adverse impacts and mitigation strategies that are associated with the update on March 31st, which will kick off a month-long public comment period, both on the draft environmental impact statement and on the content of the periodic update that will be the month of April. In short, we have, I think, the solid core of the periodic update in front of you. That's what was delivered on February 14th. The whole rest of it will be filled out in the next couple of weeks, and the month of April would be an excellent time for everyone to see the complete picture and respond to it. We'll issue the final environmental impact statement in early May and then have formal public hearings with the Planning Commission and the council during May and June, and targeting a June 11 city council action. Everything that is in this plan and regulations is in pencil until June 11th. So with that, another shout for everettwa.gov/2044 for both those drafts and a lot of other information about the periodic update. And then I have a whole bunch of slides after this that may be needed or may not be needed. But I wanted to see kind of where we go with conversation and give you that. And amendments. Councilmember Schwab does have a couple of map amendments. We could start there. There were also some questions from Councilmember Bader, answers of which were shared with the council. If we want to spend more time on neighborhood commercial or zone adjacencies or a couple of those topics, we are happy to.
Any questions at this point from council members? I have one about as far as changes, and as we go through this process, council members may get more feedback or input from constituents in our neighborhoods. When obviously we've been all working on that, when when is a good reasonable deadline if some council members wanted to make some changes? Now I know, but you know, is there a couple more weeks? What do you advise for us to make it easier in the process?
What we were hoping for today was any major changes in direction that would kind of throw this into a different direction than we had expected. Once we send the package to the state at the end of the month of April would be an excellent time for any amendments to that package. And then we'll have public hearings and things, and you can make amendments up until the very last day, easier the earlier on in the process. But I would say April would be a fantastic time.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other comments or questions about what we covered so far? Councilmember Vogely.
Yes, actually, I have a couple questions that I didn't ask previously because I just thought about them right now because I remember going to a meeting and hearing from a constituent, and they live close to the interurban trail and possible sound transit light rail stations. And I'm curious if either of those two entities, I know they're different jurisdictions than Everett, but I'm wondering if their facilities would need to follow any of our rules or not.
They do. Sound Transit and the light rail system is going to be subject to a development agreement that we negotiate with them based on our development regulations. It is an essential public facility, so we cannot preclude or unreasonably frustrate the project, but it is subject to our development regulations, and that is something that we're working with them, and we'll come back with you on briefings about that. Interurban Trail is it's a regional facility, but within each jurisdiction, I think it's run locally. So it's totally up to us how we design, administer, and improve that.
And pardon my ignorance, but is the interurban trail mentioned in the 2044? I haven't just happened upon reading it, so.
Yeah, the transportation element. So that's where we have the goals and policies. It I'm sure talks about trails and non-motorized transportation. The Parks, Recreation, and Open Space element and plan also gets into trails more on the recreation side. The full transportation element is written and is going to the Transportation Advisory Committee tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. And it might be available on that webpage already. That has maps of existing facilities and infrastructure and some policies around it.
And I was just going to add that the interurban trail is on PUD property, and we have a ILA that there are shared responsibilities with the management and maintenance of that. And we just renewed that ILA earlier this year, I think, or maybe it was the end of last year. I don't know, but it wasn't too long ago. Maybe it was, yeah. Anyway.
Glad you brought that up because that was going to be another little tidbit, because there's just some interesting things going on in the interurban trail area, and I don't know exactly what they are, but I have curiosity piqued, and so now the world knows that I'm curious. And then the last thing is I'm just hoping that council members or Lingo will bring something up that I can be excited about.
Okay. Councilmember Fosse, did you have a question?
Can I ask a question now about the specific areas of the map?
Sure. Yeah.
York, can you explain to me about Wiggums Hollow Park?
Wiggums Hollow Park, this is hearkening back to the Park District. I know from that process that Wiggums Hollow Park is partially city-owned, partially owned by Everett Housing Authority. We added a provision into the development agreement for the Park District that we would work together with Everett Housing Authority on the future of the EHA-owned portion of Wiggums Hollow Park. The zoning for it is, if I can see it right, it looks like it's UR 7 floors, which matches the zoning kind of around it. I think we had to choose the Park District property and plan development overlay has its rules set in the development agreement. So whatever we zone it in this process is not going to be effective or do anything to that property until after the development agreement is complete and the development is built. Wiggums Hollow Park, I think we just matched the zoning, which was that UR7. I don't think that there was any intention of coming out of this process of affecting the future of that. I think it remains more in that framework that we had settled on through the Park District, where we're discussing with EHA what the future of that. Is that kind of what you're thinking, or?
So
if
does this
it's-
change what it's currently zoned at?
It might. And if it did, it was not, at least from staff's perspective, for a particular reason other than matching neighboring zoning. And if that's
Yeah.
something that we need to
If-
look closer at and pull back, that's something we can do.
Could you follow up with me on that? That might be something where there's a concern because it would change ultimately probably the value of the land, changing some of the zoning things if it makes it different. So I would, yeah, just like a follow-up on that. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you. That's exactly the kind of thing that we need to hear about. Yep.
Okay, any other questions, comments at this point? Okay, Councilmember Dewey.
Okay, thank you. So I have a question on the setbacks on, I think it was 19.06. And so it cut backs to 5 feet, if I'm looking at this right. And so the question I had from constituents is, does that mean like a driveway has to be 5 feet from the property line? Or a garage or carport? I just wanted to clarify that so I can let them know what that means.
Yes, so yes, chapter 19.06 addresses setbacks. Setbacks restrict where you can place buildings and some other things. There's a proposed reduction to setbacks in the neighborhood residential zone. The current single family zones have 20 foot in the front, 20 feet in the back, 10 feet for a side street and 5 feet for a side interior. The proposed reduction is to 10 feet front, 10 feet back, 5 feet side street, 5 feet side interior. There is a list of exceptions to the setback on 19.06.030, and it accepts things like fences, chimneys, garages and carports on slopes, heat pumps, rockeries. So it would restrict garages, accept setbacks for accessory buildings. Shall not be located in front setback areas or street side setback areas for corner lots. So if memory serves, you can build a driveway and a garage in the setback, although there's some debate about which one. There's often landscaping requirements in those setbacks, and do you need to move the landscaping somewhere else if you have the driveway? So buildings out of the setback, garages out of street side setbacks, driveways, pathways, and some of those other things like fences are allowed in the setback.
Okay, so just not like a carport or garage, but the driveway could be.
Yes, I think so. I will confirm that because I know we have questions where that intersects with landscaping requirements. But
Okay.
I think you can have driveways in the setback.
Okay, that would be great. Appreciate, that was my only question.
And we're not proposing a change to the framework of what is allowed and what is not in a setback.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, Councilmember Ryan.
Thank you. Thank you, York and Allison. Regarding neighborhood commercial, I'm a big proponent of neighborhood commercial. I saw the email earlier with the suggestion about limiting it to just arterials. And I think that kind of goes against the spirit of neighborhood commercials. If it's along a more busy roadway, then it's not the neighborhood touch and feel of it. So I would be willing to compromise to have it be arterials plus 1 or 2 surrounding blocks. Cause I do think, deep in a cul-de-sac maybe isn't the appropriate place, but I would also assume that market forces would take over and people wouldn't, want to have a wine bar in a cul-de-sac. because it wouldn't get a whole lot of foot traffic. And it's also not a corner. Yeah, that's true. But you get the point. So I would just like, I'm sure we could open it up for discussion at a later point of maybe finding a right size for placement for neighborhood commercial, but I do think constraining it to just arterials is too, isn't flexible enough. I believe, I guess, also out loud, I wanted to mention, like moving forward, if there's any ways to continue focusing on, enhancements for tree canopy, urban tree canopy, and also just climate protections. I think we're gonna see a major stripping of that from the, federal administration. So I think protecting what we do have is gonna be very critical. So I'd like to make sure that we have that in place to protect our critical areas, our streams, our trees, and just our beautiful environment that we enjoy. And I guess just a thank you too for your work on the port compatibility overlay, citing for childcare facilities. And I know there's been a lot of noodling over ADUs and DADUs, and that's been taking a lot of brain power. So thanks for getting that all sorted out. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Zalingo.
Oh, I guess I have to confess some ignorance of the process here. I can maybe be a little bit scattershot with respect to the neighborhood businesses. I think the model in my head has more been what I would call minor arterials, but not pure residential streets, the smallest ones, even if they are on corners. So I have talked with another council member on that. I guess that's my intent at this point, partly because also we don't have a large number of these to go from in terms of history on this and what will actually be developed. Although I do recognize that some of these things won't make sense, but and I think many of our residents don't have a particularly good idea. There's the idea of a charming little bodega there, but what other things might be done and where that might go and how that might affect neighbors in terms of noise, lighting, parking, and traffic like that. It's easier for me to see that on what I would call a minor arterial or any arterial as opposed to pure residential streets. So that's where I'm aiming with respect to that particular thing. And I'm not quite sure, as I say, what the process is from here, the next steps, because I know with Councilmember Schwab's amendments, you are a little farther down the road in there in specific phrasing of the amendments and ready to go with that. Can you describe a little bit of what you'd like us, how to engage with you from here and the next steps to do it quickly and productively?
Sure. Well, so our hope is to get some direction on what to put into the draft that goes to the state. That doesn't have to be the final word. And if with more information and conversations, the council goes a different direction, that is fine. What we have in the plan so far is on the screen in very small text. So I will summarize it here for you.
I can hand them out.
Yeah, and then we've got some maps as well. So neighborhood commercial would be on any corner lot in the city that is a residential zone. And then we've also added 2 specific streets in which it would be all lots. One of them is West Casino Road in response to a request from that community for more opportunities for small scale neighborhood serving uses. And there are not many corners on that street. So it's a unique, and it's also a fairly built up community that's not mixed use zoning, which most of the other corridors are mixed use already. So propose having West Casino Road allow on parcels that front onto that road. And then in Lowell, there are a tiny little 1.5 blocks of, I guess, the old town center of Lowell. And it's currently a business zone, which is probably a little bit more intensity than is desired or appropriate there. But maybe just going to neighborhood residential where no commerce is allowed because there is a history of commercial enterprises on those blocks. So that we have added that as well. In the neighborhood commercial, in the lots that allow neighborhood commercial, there's a list of neighborhood serving uses, food and beverage establishment, certain subcategories of retail sales and services, clinic, lodging, vet clinic, daycare, and entertainment and recreation and offices. Those uses would be allowed on these corner lots and those two streets. Up to 3,000 square feet. Outdoor use such as a patio would be subject to an administrative use permit. For new construction, the front and side street setbacks would be reduced to 2 feet, so it could come meet the sidewalk, and a maximum front setback of 20 feet. And no off-street parking required, and off-street parking prohibited between the building and the street, so no 7-Eleven style. Hours of operation limited to 6 AM to 11 PM. And a reminder that chapter 20.08 provides noise ordinance and restricts in these residential zones to pretty quiet, especially after 10 PM. It's like we may already be exceeding the noise ordinance in those cases, subject to our ability to enforce that. So that's the neighborhood commercial framework. And then here's a map of the arterials. Alisan just handed out a paper version of that. And on the right side, maybe right side, is a map where I put dots on all of the corners that are on arterials. So where you see these green dots, you can't read it. These kind of things. And I can send this to you so you have some time with it as well. That is what it would be if restricted to an arterial, and that goes all the way down to collector arterials. Obviously, there would be many more dots of potential sites if it were not restricted to arterials. Staff feels that businesses are much more likely on the arterials because businesses thrive on customer traffic. But we also didn't at first see a problem with it not being on an arterial. These are supposed to be small scale and neighborhood, able to really fit into the neighborhoods. So I think we're okay with wherever the council wants to go, and how 5 of you, 6 of you get to that point, I defer.
Well, from my standpoint, I mean, I do have, I'm not sure again about the sequence of this. There were a number of other things I was going to propose, some specifics. I don't know whether the time to do that now or handle Councilmember Schwab's specific amendments. What do you think is the most productive?
I mean, we could start with ones that are completed and then we can, if there's some other concepts or other ones that you have, work after that.
Yep.
Is that okay?
I have them, so yeah, we'll do yours first then.
Okay.
So we're turning to maps.
Yep.
Okay. Councilmember Schwab has provided, you mentioned, I think all 3 of them. 2 of these we have professional maps and the other ones less professional maps. So this one is Glenwood and Kenwood. It is one parcel.
Use your mouse.
Oh, yeah. Does that work? Is that visible? Okay. This is, we call it the Glenwood and Kenwood parcel. It is one single parcel, although it has 2 zones right now. It is currently zoned neighborhood business to the northwest and single family R2 to the southeast. We have in the early council draft package up here, we had proposed MU4. This is the old machine shop for the Cadman mine across the street. We'd proposed MU4. And then for the parking lot, for the old parking lot for the Cadman mine, proposed UR4 residential 4 floors. Councilmember Schwab's proposal is to increase both of those by 3 floors to UR7 and MU7, and that was partially as a balance with some other amendments.
So for discussion, this goes with another kind of a combining a reduction in downzoning in the adjacent neighborhood to balance the reduction and the increase. And also this is right on the bus line. It's across the street from an industrial area. And in just another way to, and also the neighborhood behind it is protected by like a greenbelt area. So, and it's on a downhill side. So I thought this was a good opportunity to encourage the builder to increase the upzone there. So it's a little bit of a trade-off as far as the neighborhoods go.
Would you like me to go through all of the map ones? and
Yeah,
then
how
we
about you
can
do the
compare?
next one?
Sure.
Yeah, thanks.
So the next one is Mukilteo Boulevard. The change would be from Sound Avenue on the west to the end of where the neighborhood or the UR4 zone had been proposed to the east. This was a geography that was not in the original staff delineation of connectors, if you remember that geography. The Planning Commission suggested adding this one to take advantage of the arterial and the views and things like that. So we had, as a connector, we had low-rise UR4 that is about 100% lot coverage and 4 floors of height allowance. And it stretched, well, you see it on the screen there. Councilmember Schwab's proposal is to shrink back that UR4 to Sound Avenue and clustered around the Sound View Cafe and what is currently a neighborhood business zone that was developed with the recent townhomes there right across from Soundview Deli Market. That's the one.
Yeah, and for discussion's sake, this is more of the trade-off. The neighborhoods suggested that we concentrate the growth for the neighbor to absorb the numbers and that other one. These two kind of go together. Plus, we still wanted to maintain a node. Is that what we call it now? There in the current store. So there's neighbors wanted some services in that area. And so that was the thought behind the changes.
Is part of this also then recognizing the challenges of driving along Mukilteo Boulevard, the winding, the changes in elevation, and all that sort of stuff that in terms of the amount of growth, focusing it elsewhere, a little less there and a little more elsewhere?
Yeah, that's all along that, all part of that. And it's, if you drive through that neighborhood, it's not really a place because we have this discussion on the potential to growth versus what's actually going to happen. This is probably at the bottom of a list that is actually going to be upzoned, or the upzoning would be used, right? So yeah, that and that other idea is probably not going to be utilized anyway. Yeah, quite. Thank you.
It sounds like, but I just want to be certain that when you have proposed an amendment, you are taking into consideration how many units we're going to need in the future. And so you are negotiating with what has already been written and staying consistent with units, just giving here and taking there, right?
Yeah, that was the whole idea of upzoning the other properties. That made more sense. Yeah. And I think from a practical point of view, I think that other property is going to be probably utilized more than upzoning this area. So, yeah.
Okay, and then there were 2 more. This is the, so this, sorry for the difficult to read map, threw this together quickly. 2506 to 2606 Wetmore Avenue. This is just south of Everett High School. It is a series of properties under common ownership. And I thought I had drawn the rectangle. I was going to suggest that we pull in the parking lot that is just south of 26th. That is orange. Sorry, I can point this one. Because that, just to make for a more solid pattern, plus it's a definitely redevelopable parking lot. It would not include 2 parcels that front on Everett Avenue, but would cover the rest of that block.
And for discussion's sake, this was an encouragement for the developers there. They expressed that they really want to develop this property, and they already have a reputation and I should say a history of building well-built affordable housing. And this also goes along with the kind of the stair step philosophy. That's kind of the peak of the hill there, and in all directions that the zoning allows kind of the stair step down, and it is right next to the downtown corridor.
So what does, sorry, I didn't.
Oh,
What
to
does this
front.
do?
Sorry.
I see a rectangle.
Yes, thank you. Orange is UR7, so residential 7 floors. Red is MU15, mixed urban 15 floors. So it would increase the height from 7 to 15. And I guess I didn't catch whether the commercial was a component or whether we wanted to keep it all residential.
So it's moving from orange to red?
Yeah.
If
it's approved by
Okay.
by this board.
Thank you.
May I have clarity on what's there now?
Yeah, a row of houses, I think.
Row of rental houses, but they're all under single ownership.
So would this, would this entail considerable displacement? If the whole block was redeveloped?
I may read into the common ownership by an investment vehicle of the entire block that the intent is for redevelopment one way or the other, and it's just a matter of how much capacity would be there, but I don't know.
Councilor Lingle.
I think if this sounds to me like it's right next to or very close to the proposed Cozon Wetmore Micro Studios, I think 5/3 or so, couple of 180, 200 or something. I mean, it sounds like it's consistent with that level of denser, smaller, walkable, more affordable kinds of things that we're trying to do in that area. I mean, unless I'm missing that location,
We have no idea what the product will be.
they do have some very specific plans out there that are online, and I have talked to one of the builders. I haven't got a chance to tour. They have done another one of those, I think, in the Snohomish area, so I do want to go see that. But as I understand it, the micro studios with garages, the idea is probably smaller square footage, less expensive, more downtown, more walkable, people spending probably less time in their apartments and more time in the downtown. So at least as I understand it, that sounds like that's consistent with our intent in terms of affordability and density here. And I guess Council President Schwab, that's consistent with the way you're viewing things.
I view this as an incentive from a developer that owns the land already, has a history of building affordable housing. And if displacement is an issue, there's plenty of properties that he owns, that the company owns, that there'd be plenty of places, affordable housing for these people to go to. He's the developer specializes in affordable housing.
Okay.
Yeah. Not that there's any guarantees if we upscale, or that he even exercises it, right? There's no guarantees, yeah.
No, I'm just, is Colby right next to Wetmore? I should know this inherently, but. Okay, so the long ones are Wetmore and Colby, 25th and 20
Yeah.
other.
Yeah, Hoyt, Colby, Wetmore, Rock, yes. Next one?
Yep.
And then the final one, this is 2701 Wetmore. It is a parking lot across the street from the Everett Public Library. And this one is currently zoned MU 15. No, it's proposed for MU 15. It is currently zoned, I believe, MU
It's Hoyt.
7 to 9.
It's Hoyt. It's not Wetmore.
Yeah, must be. This was very quick. The parking lot across the street from Everett Public Library, that much I know. The proposal would be to go from 15 floors to 25 floors, which is what the dark red that you see south of it, instead of the lighter red, which is the 15 floors.
Do you mean Hoyt?
Yes.
Yes, sounds
Thank
like-
you.
yes,
Okay.
sorry.
And this is adjacent to the 25 story.
Correct.
All these properties have the same zoning adjacent to.
So those are a package of 4 or 4 separate ones, however we want to see them.
Well, if appropriate, I would move to go forward on these.
Do you want to do
As
one at a
proposed.
time or all four with?
I guess it depends if there's broad agreement. And again, this is not the end of the story for this. This would, this is what we would incorporate into the next and final draft. And again, at the council's discretion, they could be changed in the future. There's no sort of anchoring by taking action here.
Comments, thoughts? Councilman Ryan?
Thank you. I don't have any concerns about the first 2 maps that we saw with the swap and up zone, down zone. This seems reasonable as well, but the other one where there's displacement, I would need to know more about, like how many people, I mean, I'm not saying it like, would it be imminent, but the writing seems to be on the wall. So I would have concerns over the need to preserve naturally occurring affordable housing, as we've been hearing lately, but I need to know more about the process, and it sounds like some council members have been reached out to, and I have not. So I would just like to know more before moving forward.
The difference is stories. It's not changing the underlying, it's just adding more stories to the what could be.
Mm.
So the proposal at this point is 7 and it's taking it to 15.
Okay. Understood.
Councilmember Mobley.
I'm remembering the committee meeting we had last week about with Casino Road and just talking about, this isn't necessarily about the amendment, but are we also discussing right of first refusal type stuff? That may not be what I know we're not talking about that right now, but putting some of those types of can't think of the word, things.
I think, is it Topacopa?
No,
Tenant opportunity to purchase
Yes.
and
that type of thing. So like, I guess I'm just putting it out there because there's going to be a lot over the whole entire city. There's certain places that are more at risk of displacement. And so I guess I just want to bring up that I think also in 2044, not the year, but in this that we're talking about, we are also putting some things in place so that hopefully when displacement happens, there are better ways of going forward with by the people who are being displaced. Are there better ways of, there's probably better ways of saying that, and Jennifer is usually really good.
Just speaking generally about anti-displacement policies, which is you heard about at the committee meeting, and the LISC has worked with the community and around Casino Road about ways to incorporate those values into the comprehensive plan policies, and the team has done lots of work on that as well. And there's a lot of different, the opportunity to purchase is one, but there are different things that can be done to ensure that displacement is minimized and that folks have the opportunity to still be a part of our community, even as we grow. I don't know if they have all the answers in this moment, but I think that's a good point, and it is true when we look at all of the changes that come along with the comprehensive plan, that these are highlighting a couple places, but just like Alice-Ann pointed out, those houses, which I walk by almost every single day, I did yesterday morning and last night too, are a mix of like eightplexes and duplexes, and they're all, lots of neighbors live in them today, but they're renting from the same property owner who would have the opportunity, with the plan as proposed, to redevelop at 7 stories and maybe redevelop at a higher limit. And so how do we incorporate those policies and you guys have talked about tenant regulations that committee last year. Those are the kinds of things that might have an influence. And then I know that I don't believe that the owner hasn't reached out to administration, but I'm sure council president could connect with you, Councilmember Ryan, on something you might want to have a conversation with about their vision for that request too. So.
Thank you. And yeah, to bring it back to what we're actually talking about, that I railed us off, is thanks for reminding us that it's already in this plan stated for 7 and it could go up to 15 or whatever the numbers are. So thank you.
there are in the multifamily tax exemption, which this would be eligible for, there are relocation expenses. I'm getting a little bit outside of my memory here, but there is provisions to address displacement of existing renters as a condition of receiving that tax benefit. I'll have to check on exactly how that might apply in this and other situations. The housing element has some policies about displacement. For example, HO 49 at the very end. Implement community preference strategies to support residents at risk of displacement, promoting neighborhood stability and equitable access to housing for vulnerable populations. There's a couple others. I wouldn't say they in a situation exactly like this, I don't know if we're hitting the right tone perfectly. So that's another opportunity to start with the right policy language and then work on the tools. We've talked a lot about tenant protections and things over the years that I've been here. And some of these are in that bucket. Some of these could be directed by this plan. There's also actions for things that we're not able to get to satisfactorily in the next couple of months, but we want to kind of commit to doing that we could include. So for instance, if we wanted to do more on displacement at an individual level or building level, we could write an action on it that then would deliver a work program in the next couple of years.
Thank you. Thanks for the discussion. It's good.
Council President, maybe I would just propose that you guys just to like, well, one first step, you could consider the motion on that first kind of swap of the Glenwood and the Mukilteo Boulevard and get that guy moving and then see how things go with the other two then that you have brought forward too. So
Consider it made.
Okay, the first two. Okay,
Second the motion.
any more comments? Okay. Clerk, please take the roll.
Vice President Zarlingo.
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse,
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan,
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely,
Yes.
Councilmember Tui.
Yes.
President Schwab.
Yes. Okay, so I have the two amendments and does anyone here have any suggestions? Is it best to wait and to have more time for council to kind of think about these properties? Or I know Councilman Ryan, you kind of,
Yeah, I'll move to pass that third one though, or the fourth one with the across from the library.
Okay.
Seconded.
Clerk, please take the roll.
Vice President Zarlingo.
Yes.
Councilmember Fosse,
Yes.
Councilmember Ryan.
Yes.
Councilmember Vogely,
Yes.
Councilmember Tui.
Yes.
President Schwab.
Yes. Okay, for discussion, is there something more for these type of projects that council may want for discussion or more time? Councilmember Zarlingo?
Perhaps now's the time for several of the things that I have corresponded with you about and that Councilmember Vogely and I have been working on. One in particular, with your permission, we have been talking about either a manufactured housing zoning overlay or a manufactured housing zoning of some sort, and that's been in the works for a little while. For the public standpoint and for transparency on this, the idea is a zone or overlay to protect, at least for a period of time, established manufactured housing parks that serve some combination of residents that are older, that is typically 55 plus, low income, disabled, or veterans. And I think we should consider the applicability in these zones of trailers, modular homes, tiny houses, and other compatible manufactured housing. In part also, we can consider some of this may not be our role fully as a city. It may be part of the governance of the mobile home parks themselves. There are things like the age restrictions, but I have discussed with some of the residents, consider encouraging the parks to allow a limited number of younger residents, perhaps one per dwelling or one per senior resident, that are full-time caregivers for these senior residents. The idea there is to provide a practical way for incremental lower cost housing for non-seniors, that is the caregivers, that would also improve density, meeting some of our goals, and provide jobs while reducing commute trips. So that's the thrust so far. That is not as well developed as Council President Schwab's initiatives, but I'm not sure of the sequence from here. I think that getting that out in the public and then over the near term, I think we'll get feedback on that, work with Councilmember Vogely and make sure that that's consistent with our intent. Is there more that we should do on that particular topic at this point, or do you have marching orders and specifics enough?
Yeah, I think so. I just wanted to confirm that an overlay would be, we've done a little bit of research in the last couple of days on this topic, and before that, there is a concept of a mobile home park overlay. It's something that Snohomish County and a couple other jurisdictions have implemented, where you zone the park for mobile home units and parks, but not much else. You had a couple other complementary types. that would mean that you would not be able to close down a park and redevelop it into townhouses, apartments, or something more valuable. It would not protect the park from, or residents of the park from rent increases. It would not prevent or have anything to do with maintenance or prevent it from closing. It's just you would remove that temptation for a higher and better value from it. So if that's what the proposal is, we could include as a start, something like a policy in the housing element that says protect mobile home parks from redevelopment into other uses. And then we could take that as the general framework and start working on specific codes. If it was more around kind of the tenant protections, we can word a policy like that and get into, there's some state law provisions around tenant protections and mobile home parks or opportunity to purchase. Those are a little bit, I guess, complicated or would need a little bit more back and forth to get the right one. So if it's the first, those are some words that would work and get us started.
Yeah, yes, and because and in particular because it's reasonable density for single family style housing, denser than other single family low density that we're accustomed to. It's also supporting the needs of some vulnerable populations, both in terms of cost and in terms of age. And there's a long tradition of those kinds of that use on those properties. So that's what's behind my thinking on this. I think Councilmember Vogely's as well. So yeah, that's how I see it, Councilmember.
Councilor Vogely.
Both, but for the purpose of the 2044 plan, definitely get the, in my opinion, the overlay language built in. I think that's maybe not easy. I know there's a lot of work in it, but it seems like the right time and place to put an overlay in to help to at least start the protection of all of these mobile homes that have already been built and placed and owned by folks that are absolutely unable to be moved. Yeah, so I agree with overlay now, possibly rent protection later.
There is one point to clarify on that you're bringing up that I think is important in this, and that this is an unusual and almost unique type of housing in that the housing is owned by the owners, by the property owners, but the physical property, the underlying property is owned by another entity, and those houses are in many cases simply not movable. They're serviceable where they are. They will serve the needs that they're serving right now for many years, but they are generally not movable. So there's an extra amount of vulnerability there. And yet there's this historic, traditional, long-term use that's been there. So I think we're trying to be careful about restrictions and specifics here, not doing more than we need to, but enough to preserve this kind of housing.
If the council is on board with this relatively simple sentence added to the housing element, we can do that. And then would we work maybe with Councilmember Zarlingo and maybe Councilmember, was it Vogely or Vogely, on the specifics, and then bring that back a more fleshed out proposal to the full council in the next month or two? That work?
Any objection? Okay. Okay. Great. I
have
think
more, but
um,
others.
do we need to take a recess? Okay, yeah, more. Okay. We were just thinking about taking a break. That's all. Go for it.
No, well, I guess I have several more, but the nearest one was a little more on the neighborhood commercial. I guess my perspective on that, I don't think I'll go further on that except to say that combining the fact that those are likely to happen, to be practical on these what I call minor arterials, and the fact that our business people are innovative and energetic and adventurous. And if we are going to expand into this, I am more comfortable letting that expansion happen some and teach us what kinds of uses they are and how they actually work with respect to the neighborhoods. It would give us as a council the chance, once some of these are actually implemented in the best places, which are likely to be on these major or minor arterials, it would give us the chance then to see how they work, to tweak these to tweak these uses or any regulations on that to make them as compatible as we can and as productive and positive parts of those neighborhoods as they can be. And then we can always do more. So that's kind of the last I think I had with respect to with that neighborhood commercial, my perspective on that. And then I'm ready for a recess or.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, council. So let's take a 6-minute recess and then we have one more briefing. Okay, thank you for your patience, and recess is over. So we, at this point, we have we'll finish up our briefing with our comp plan. And so do we have any more comments or questions from council? Councilmember Zarlingo.
I want to describe a particular area that I've been looking into and want to get a sense of the council about getting some specifics and feedback from planning on this. And this has to do with 19th Avenue Southeast, SR 527, the Bothell Everett Highway. The zones here from where 527 begins to where it ends in Everett at 132nd, State Route 96, Fred Meyer at the south end. And the background on this is that, our thrust generally in this plan is to increase density along arterials, especially the major arterials. And I get that. That's what's generally happening. The problem here is we have an arterial with some significant problems and differences from other areas. Part of this is the lake itself. This is the oldest road from Everett to Seattle. 527 predates 99, 5, the interurban, it's all older than that stuff. So there's a lot of development there. There are particular problems not only with the lake itself, where we can't really fix the road. We have a major state highway that has some kinks and some very low speed sections in it, and some areas where people keep running off the road and over the sidewalk that is our very treasured Silver Lake Loop Trail. Those things impair, in my mind, the function of this arterial and make me question about the MU15 zoning in some specific areas. In addition, there are 4 or 5 roads, major roads, that just end at 19th, going one way or another. 100th Street Southeast, there's an idea that someday that may be punched through I-5 over to the Everett Mall. But I don't think any of us are going to live long enough to see that, partly because of the current state of budgets for transportation in this state, which are really going the wrong way. 100th, 110th, 112th, they make a funny Z turn and end at the Safeway parking lot, for example. 116th, a real traffic problem there, again, where that road ends at Silver Lake. Nothing we can do about that. Some of that also at 121st or Silver Lake Road, something that's kind of become a more than minor arterial. So the general idea here is that this is not an arterial like the rest of them where we can increase density as much as we might otherwise. That's some other factors that I won't go into here, but my proposal is to keep the MU15 density at the southernmost block of this and the Fred Meyer vicinity there, which is kind of a red rectangle at the far south end, and in the area at the north at El Capitan, south of El Capitan from 1,200 feet or so. I think I calculated that. Those are areas with good access to high capacity transit. And also, especially at the south end there's a real collection of things that near the Fred Meyer, the Sprouts, the various other services and businesses there, and where there is bus rapid transit, will be apparently more bus rapid transit coming. And also the convergence of a couple of state highways and a mile or so from an intersection with I-5. So there is an area there that I think can be our best chance of supporting something like the MU15 zoning. And then the other element of this that drives my suggestion, which is coming here, to go to the MU7, I think it is the one notch less high, is that since the city limits are near the edge here, and there's a bunch of already existing healthy, single-family, low-density housing there, we don't have the ability to step down. So here we're talking about stepping down from 160 feet to 30 or so. And that's inconsistent with the other things we talked about. I was looking at our general overall goals for this. and the standards and the purpose that I'll quote here from these, to promote a reasonable building scale and relationship between buildings within an area or zoning district, to promote compatibility between areas with different height limits, to promote greater separation between uses that might not be compatible, to promote options for privacy for neighboring properties, and to promote additional heights in exchange for public benefits. So I think we can do at the edges of this zone, the north and south ends, I think we can go to the MU-15, but I think the MU-15 in that central zone where we have neither the room nor a properly functioning state highway because of these impairments, nor the impairments from the natural feature of Silver Lake and the parks around it and the uses there. So that's what has led me to a specific recommendation that the very northern and southern blocks of that go to MU-15, but that we back off one notch for the sections of that in the middle to MU-7, I think it is the other one.
And a clarification, you had shared some notes earlier. A lot of the conversation was around adjacency to lower density zones. So I put the rectangles on only the east side of the street. Was your intention both sides of the street? I may not have gotten that right.
The bigger, well, the problem in part, some of the problem is adjacency. That's mostly on the east side of the street. Some of the problem is density and the ability of 19th to handle the kinds of density and traffic we're talking about increasing there when we have all these roads that end and where we already have some serious traffic problems on roads like 116th. So and in terms of practicality, I'm not sure anybody with sense would be building 15 stories in that area, especially when there's nothing nearby that. I mean, I've been going to places like the U District and Bellevue, looking at these ranges from 7 stories up to 15 or higher. And it's hard for me to imagine that makes much sense in those areas, except at the far north and south ends. And I think given the difficulties with traffic there and those ending streets and the natural features there, an incremental approach seems to me to be to do the MU-15 at the northern and southern ends. But I will also defer to future consideration to see if perhaps on the west side of 19th, a limited amount of the MU-15 between 19th and I-5 might make sense. I don't think it's making sense commercially anytime soon, but in terms of conflict with the other neighboring areas, there are a couple of spots there probably in the vicinity of Costco in that core area perhaps can be maintained as MU-15, but the rest of that I just see only the northern and southern ends really are compatible and are ever likely to be developed at those kind of densities.
So that was a lot. Is there a way are you looking for some direction now from this council? I mean, your arguments sound good. It would be good to have some more specifics as far as the zoning.
And I can't say that I know all of the possible consequences or knock-on effects. So I think what I'm asking for is a clear sense of the council that these are concerns, they're worth evaluating, and they're worth considering then, and some sections of MU-7 in the middle of these MU-15 zones.
Any Councilman Ryan?
Thanks. Yeah, I would love some follow-up too. I'm having a hard time seeing the map up there of like which parts would stay MU-15. I guess more clarity on the map would be Great Park and well, chatty chat. And then to the point about step downs by the residential housing that's there, that's the county has that space. So I think it'd be helpful to know if they're providing that step down, or if it would be our city MU-15 and then residential, and then there wouldn't be that step down. So we would need to do it for them.
Right. Currently, our height reductions are to the higher zoned property is who needs to step down. Between MU-15 and neighborhood residential, or I think we would apply it to the county's single family zone properties as well. The separation is for 50 feet horizontally out within the parcel that's MU15. You have to meet the height of the zone that's adjacent to it. So for 50 feet, you'd be limited to 35 feet if that's where we wind up for the NR zone. And then there's a 10-foot landscaping strip and setback from the property line and a site obscuring vegetated buffer. So those are the measures that if you were to develop a property that's MU15 that is next to a neighborhood residential zone, you would have to leave your closest 50 feet lower, and you would have to leave nothing in the 10 feet closest to that property except dense hedges and bushes and trees.
Great. Yeah, I'd say generally I'm supportive. I do think that having the higher zones between 19th and the freeway does make sense. When I first moved to Everett, I lived on Silver Lake and familiar with the area, especially that one road where cars always drive off.
Yeah.
And generally speaking as well, I would be happy to defer to the council member that represents that area and our at-large members as the representatives to know what's best in their districts. But a clearer map, I think, would be helpful just for a good thumbs up. Thanks.
Yep. Councilor.
I know it's already been stated, but even, so that 50-foot setback and the 10-foot buffer is if it's next to residential, single family, even if it's not in our jurisdiction, right?
Correct. That's how
So,
we currently interpret
just-
that already.
Period. Okay, just wanted to.
If single families, currently it's single family zones, if there's a single family lot on the other side of the jurisdictional boundary, we will require the property in Everett to step down.
And does that mean a currently built single family or a zoned single family? Because it could be zoned big, but there's still the single family house there. So is there a differentiation?
Just the zone
Okay.
that matters. And yes, do keep in mind that where we have UR4, for example, a lot of times it's characterized by existing single family houses.
Yeah, yeah, and I appreciate the thoughtfulness in that area. I know that's a very well-traveled area and it's highly developed already, so I appreciate that. Okay,
Just one other example in terms of allowing for future higher heights if those turn out to be sensible. A proposal 20 or so years ago, Alan Clark's Silver Lake Center, they were going to go to about 9 floors. I think it was a little over 100 feet total in 2 towers. So they were going to trade they were going to get a taller limit, but narrower coverage. And so there are opportunities if somebody says, oh, there's one real spot there where I want to go up higher than the MU7, they could still do that. They would apply for I'm not sure what you'd call it, essentially an exception, a trade-off, a compensation that way. So that if that becomes a viable thing for some reason in an area there, that could still be handled in an area that still preserves our ability to avoid the downsides of a big wall of 160-foot high. Because that's the point is, I mean, a 50-foot buffer doesn't mean a heck of a lot if it's against a 160-foot tall building. I've been walking around to see what that feels like, and it's not quite what we're thinking about for this area. Anyway, that's it. Thank you.
okay. Any other comments? So it'd be nice maybe come back with like a map, I guess you call it, with the
Sure, we can give some more information about
Okay.
this one, and I can't remember if there's others that could benefit from this information. Ultimately, we'll be looking for what to put into the package to the state, recognizing that can still be changed.
Do you foresee a change in overall units? I mean, if
This
you,
would reduce the capacity, I think we would still be okay. I feel like the package that you had provided in my mind seemed roughly balanced.
okay,
I don't think the increment between 7 and 15 is going to break our capacity. We will be doing the full land capacity analysis once this map is settled on that draft.
and so after we submit the maps and then we make some alterations later, how does that work with the state? Do they have to reapprove it?
We'll send the amendments to them.
amendments.
Yeah.
So
and-
at this point, we'd want to limit them. If we change the amount of, if we reduce the amount of housing, that would be more of a concern from their
Maybe.
point of view.
I think we can operate
Okay,
the way we want, and I think we're doing the right thing by the state, and we'll keep them posted. We'll hear, of course, when we send the full draft to them if there are any issues.
so you'll let the state know these are potential amendments. Okay.
Last thing, certainly, the intent here is to provide enough specifics so that we can get a more specific map that it could also give you the chance to evaluate, are there any undesirable effects, any consequences that we need to further trade off or adjust? I guess the other element of that then is if there are areas there, it really does seem like if there's a spot anywhere where this kind of heightened density will make sense, it's that intersection of 527 and Highway 96, 132nd and Highway and 19th Avenue. And if in that area, there is an opportunity to expand the MU15 zone, then we ought to look at that. I suspect that's already been looked at as part of the Planning Commission and your work on it. But if it turns out that the MU15 zone can be expanded east-west, for example, that is an area where it might actually function. We might actually get that housing that way. So I'd certainly be open to that.
Great. Thank you.
So should we bring the zoning down in the red circled area to 7 floors that we go to the state? Is that okay with the council, recognizing that it can change again?
I'd like to see a map, but any
Rather
objection at this
or
point?
Will we have a chance to come back to the council in the next 2 weeks? It can be a brief one.
Okay, that'd be great. That would be good. Thank you.
Will do.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for that briefing. It wasn't very brief, but it was important. Thank you. All right, so on to our next, and we have a continuation of our budget policy. And we would like to continue our discussion. Pardon? Well, we have our budget, our staff here, and they're here. Our attorney has to stay around no matter what, so.
Sadly, yes.
Yeah, we don't have a further briefing or presentation to make, but you guys held your budget committee from 5:30 to about 6:15. And so we had put this on the agenda in the recognition that you might not get to everything during that time. And so Heidi and Jamie Lee hung around and are ready to hear. I think at the end of the committee, you mentioned that you might want to start with talking about the contents of the proposed budget book and how that comes to council as a starting point.
Yeah, I think that let's maybe we can finish up on that point and bring others in our next meeting. Any discussion about? I know we've had a lot of discussion about what types of forecasts and like staffing presentation, those types of things. So if council members like, yeah, go ahead. Councilmember Tui.
Yeah, some of the things I think that came up out of our council retreat, and Mike had some really good thoughts on that would be good to include in the preliminary annual budget book that you guys prepare, is to include the 6-year financial forecast with assumptions and implications. I know you do it for the final, but we don't always spend very much time on the final because we're so busy with the preliminary. So that would be great. And then he also talked about how illustrate both the structural balance and the legal balance in the book. And the thing I like about that is then we can see if we're closing that structural deficit that we're trying to do over the course of time, and just kind of look and see how we're doing with that. And then he also recommended staffing, when there's staffing changes, to include rationale for the changes. And so I thought those were all really good things to be included in the book. And there may be other things that council members would like added. I don't know you, but those were for sure.
Well, I think for this discussion, it would be, those are good ideas. So if we wanted to break them down kind of and give specific direction on those here in a minute. So, but let's have some more discussions, and then let's kind of go back, and even if we have to repeat it'd be good if maybe if this council, we could select a few of those and move forward with those. So Councilmember Ryan.
Great. Yeah, I think those all sound great, especially support the rationale for staffing changes. And I think it's also good to maybe use that as time to highlight which staff members are grant funded as well. I don't know if this is like easier said than done, so I don't want to say it and then have it be a thing if it's just way too much of a lift. But I would like to see the budget book look at more than just last year versus, or this year versus next year. So it gets hard to see trends over time when we're just comparing to last year. So if we could see more of changes over 3 years or 5 years to notice if there is a huge increase in certain areas or a decrease in another area, then it helps to identify trends better than anomalies and changes because of grant funded positions that are one time. And I think it helps for that forecasting portion and to know how things are changing or not changing over time. So if that's an easy ask, I would appreciate that. Thanks.
I'd like to make a comment about financial forecasting. The staff is a perfectionist and you guys are about as perfect as it gets. And I really appreciate that. From my point of view, I think it's okay to be off. We need to put enough clarification. Hey, this is just an estimate. Things can change, whatever clauses you need to put in there to let us know when we read through it that, yeah, we know that that may be off or maybe different. So I know from your point of view, you guys are hesitant to put things on that aren't exact or perfect, which I really appreciate too. I mean, there's a balance there and I don't know where that's at, but I respect that. And I also would understand that if you missed it by a very small percentage, which would be very unique, that if there was enough clauses in there to let us know, hey, you guys asked for this prediction or this forecast. I say prediction, that's probably not the best thing, but this forecast and understanding that things can change. And please come back if we go forward with some of your forecasts in the wrong. Remind me too that I said this, all right? So I appreciate your professionalism and not wanting to do this. And I know from a financial person, it's reluctance to make forecasting that when you don't have enough, when there's too many variables. I think there's just a level of accuracy that you want to meet, and I appreciate that. So sometimes it might take a few little chances with the forecasting. Yeah, Councilmember.
Yeah, to add on to that too, I think including a clear list and description of assumptions made, I think is helpful too for knowing the fuller picture and also for the public to know what types of things are being considered. Thanks.
Yeah, and Heidi, I saw you.
Oh, sure. Yes, and to speak to Councilmember Rhines, there's the long-term financial planning section of the final budget book, and it does clearly state what the assumptions are for not just the revenues, but for the expenditures too. Also goes even more in detail with our major funds, how they're reported in our financial statements. Also, along with anything in the proposed budget it's still subject to change because that is really what's presented to council and it's not firm unless it's approved. So even if we provide you with a 6-year outlook or personnel changes, it's really at the time of what we were proposing. In regards to the personnel information that Councilmember Toohey had shared, we do have a personnel summary section of the final budget book, and it is, a requirement for the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award to share personnel summary changes in greater detail. So it is in there, and we do also highlight positions that are in their limited term grant funded positions in the explanation.
Councilmember Vogel.
Yes, I was really staffing changes. I've been one to talk about that since I started. here. And on Councilmember Tui's memo, it says any recommended changes include the rationale for the change. And to put it in the preliminary annual budget book. So. And then also to add on, more years of looking at what the budget is so that we can see. I have in my office budget books, binders, the proposed and the actuals, like 2011, 2014. I haven't been here that long. I had to go find them from other things. And so I'm looking through it to try to figure out what is repetitive, what is changing, what is our executive director now being called. And so there's been a lot of staffing changes, whether it's by person or by a switch to a different occupation code. And I know that all of those things are listed. But it has been really me getting into the weeds in my office of trying to figure out who's who and what's what and why do we now have a deputy mayor and now why do we have a super duper executive person? Didn't know, so that there have been changes. It would be really nice to know, before there is a change in personnel, like we had our VSIP, voluntary separation IP, and there have been staff, FTEs, that are no longer on the books as an occupation code. And I also know some other things. So having it very visible before it actually happens with the rationale for the change, getting those occupation codes and names of folks written down. I know I didn't write it down to make it coherent, but I just know that I have had issues, not with you two people, specifically, just overall in the budget. When do we hire new people? When are they upgraded? Because they cost money and I want people to have good jobs, but I also want to know when we are reinstating either old jobs that were cut before or new occupation codes that have an entirely different scenario. So I still haven't figured out in my 7 years how to get that to take place, but I'm still interested in it. And I know that other people are too, because it says staffing changes, when and why. I'll try to see if I can get it into more concise wording so that you can actually go back and talk to budget accounting stuff and you're like, oh, that's what council member wants. So I'm just putting it out there.
Okay. So I think in summary, what I'm hearing is, and I think you have the notes, one of the notes that we've been working off of is the 6-year financial forecast with the preliminary budget with a description of assumptions and implications. Illustrate both structural balance versus legal balance, and staffing changes and any recommendations changes included in the rationale of the change. So if direction without objection, that's 3 things. I mean, I hate to give them more. Is it more specific that you want to?
A quick question or
Yeah.
two just related to this. I think in some cases, duties get shuffled around between people as well. And it's well within the mayor's authority and an obligation and to run things that way. So I think some clarity on that would help if we find, because if the duties get shuffled around between people or departments, then some clarity that way would help. And then one other thing that I was going to ask about is, so often when we're asking questions and the answer is, well, we don't close the books until June. And I get that with Council President Schwab's kind of leveraging off on what he was saying. Do you have a sense in March or April or May or how good is the sense do you find for what really is going to happen in June? Is it well, this is usually within 5% or 2%, or, I mean, having done forecasting at a business for a few years, I understand how the difficulty of it. And I understand we cannot be promised numbers, but do you have a sense of, at this time of year and maybe a month or two from now, how close are we to knowing what we'll know in June?
Yes, and I did mention in our previous meeting that I will be providing you with an updated December preliminary financial report. I think what has happened in the past is you would receive a preliminary and then you would receive a final in June. But we do monitor it every single time period 13 closes because there's new revenue and expenditure activity. Alongside that, we also have to look into our year-end forecasting, so plugging in the most updated numbers. I also know how fixed people can be on numbers, and it is nice to be able to share a firm number that people can really grasp and know that it's real and not just an estimate.
Okay. So, thank you for that's kind of a message oh, go ahead.
Well, I don't think you mentioned multi-year analysis, and I think that is also very important.
Okay.
When we do the forecast, also to look back, 5 or 6 years on these different budget items.
Okay, so I think we'll just leave this as kind of a direction and allow your staff to kind of put together some.
I think it's great direction for your part 2 of the budget committee
Yeah.
meeting. And I just want to note that as we look at how we might include some of those things in the preliminary budget that you normally see in the final budget book, that we will also bring an adjustment to the budget calendar. I know at least the 6-year financial forecast will take more time, so we
Okay.
would plan to deliver the budget a little bit later than we might be planning already. I don't know about the rest of them because we haven't talked about all those yet. But if they're important pieces of information that you need, maybe a couple weeks is okay. And that's something that you just would want to weigh, and we'll have that for further conversation and moving forward.
Well, and I
at budget
appreciate
committee.
that a lot. I think the end after Ben, this is the 4th round. I think the end of the process feels rushed. So maybe it would be better off to have more of the information presented, even if it's 2 weeks later, but it
Well, I
would
just meant like the budget book itself is going to be later if we put all this in it.
the final budget book,
Preliminary,
the preliminary budget book,
Yeah.
which is normally given when? What's your,
mid to late October.
And we vote in
So just
December.
think about it for next time we
Okay.
have committee.
all right, I appreciate that. Thanks. Councilmember Vogely.
Let's see, there used to be, I think, but I wasn't here when it happened. Emails that went out that said, congratulations to so-and-so. They have now been offered this position and are in it. I don't think that happens anymore unless it does and we just don't get those emails. So even just knowing that there's somebody in a position, super helpful. Seeing new people over here that, who is that and why are they here? Don't even know their name yet. But anyways, that could be helpful in getting my request answered. People are working here. This is what their name is and this is what they do. Thanks. That's all.
Okay, thank you for all your input tonight, and thank you staff for staying extra late. Really appreciate that. I guess we're done with we'll recess for executive session with a 1-minute transport and a 10-minute meeting. For the record, we're gonna have executive session with no action to follow. We're back. Executive session is over. No further business. Meeting is adjourned.